some of them has been wrong, that some of them have misunderstood us.
His symbols of authority included a fly whisk, a walking stick, and an intricately adorned African heart. Collectively, the symbols of power created a visual narrative that commanded attention and conveyed a sense of reverence. They were not mere accessories, but rather extensions of Jomo's identity and his as Kenya's president. A man with a moderate height, with a thick beard, who often brushed his long curly hair to the back of his head.
We want to rule our country.
And now, it only remains for me to present to you, Mr. Prime Minister, these constitutional instruments which establish Kenya's independence.
December 12th, 1963. Then in his early 70s, he became the founding father of the Republic of Kenya. He's known in history as the man who won his country independence.
My leadership has not been to darkness and death, but to light and prosperity.
To millions of Kenyans then and now, he is simply called Mzee, a Swahili equivalent for an older man, and in the proverbial African saying, a wise man, or simply a leader. During his 14-year rule, Jomo Kenyatta was known for his distinctive personal style. A leather jacket was his political trademark. He wore it to almost every political or national event or gathering. A big ring, and well-carved walking stick and a fly whisk. The fly whisk was a gift from Ethiopia from Emperor Haile Selassie. It was a sign of authority and a sign of peace. But Jomo Kenyatta's story begins at the time Kenya had fallen under the British protectorate, and later a colony. He was born Kama Wangegi in 1890s. At the time, the European scramble for Africa was on. In 1895, Britain declared protectorate over Kenya.
When we formed the Kikuyu Central Association, Kenyatta was still an employee of the Nairobi municipality. We discovered that he was a clever man who knew the English language well. And since none of us could speak the language, we decided to engage his services
Educated at a mission school, he worked in various jobs before becoming politically engaged through the Kikuyu Central Association.
When we later appointed him Secretary General of our party, he was called into the government office and told, "If you have become a member of that association, tell us right now, and you will be fired. If you don't want to be fired, say so, and you will be prosecuted and imprisoned for contravening government employment regulations by joining a political association." Kenyatta agreed to give up his job.
Throughout the 1920s, Jomo Kenyatta immersed himself in the movement against a white settler-dominated Kenyan government. As a member of the Kikuyu community, he traveled to London in 1929 to protest the British government's recommendation that its African territories be more closely united at the expense of Kikuyu interests.
Before 1952, Kenyatta had spent something like 20 years, 25 years, partly abroad, fighting for Kenya's independence.
He really came to attention because of these enormous mass meetings and the tremendous demagogic power he had over the Kikuyu people, and his ability really to make them do exactly as he wished or project his ideas into them.
While president of the nationalist Kenya African Union, Jomo Kenyatta was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment in 1953 in alleged connection with the violent 1952 Mau Mau rebellion. He denied this affiliation.
And after the Jaramogi had joined Legislative Council with Wakina Ngala and Akina Masinde Muliro, President Moi and Ronald Ngala, the question of Kenyatta came up in the parliament. And Jaramogi stood up and said, unless and until Mzee Kenyatta was released to lead the African people, it would be very difficult for the Africans to accept another person as a leader of Kenya. The majority of African people, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was their second god.
And Uhuru na Kenyatta meant that Kenya should attain its independence after the release of Jomo Kenyatta and the other fighters that had been imprisoned with him in Kapenguria and elsewhere.
After his release, he negotiated the constitutional terms of Kenya's independence. Jomo Kenyatta easily stood out among leaders agitating for Kenya's independence. He was much older than most of his freedom struggle colleagues, but also oozed the air of the leader of choice in the group, complete with a commanding presence and voice.
We must show the world that some of them has been wrong, that some of them have misunderstood us, and it's only by our action they will know that we mean business.
As a result, he was the unanimous pick of all the leaders, including Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who turned down an offer by the colonial authorities that would have made him the first prime minister of a self-governing Kenya.
Jomo Kenyatta is the father of the African nationalism and the African national movement in this country.
But surely you're all rather more advanced than he is in your thinking about politics. Wouldn't he embarrass you if he was really let go now?
We cannot in any sense be more advanced than our teacher and master, whom I think is much more advanced in political outlook in this country than we are.
Brothers, I think I have spoken enough in this language. It is not my wish that I should be speaking to you in a foreign and, for that matter, in colonialistic language.
At an age estimated to be over 70, Kenyatta became the country's first prime minister. A year later, in 1964, Jomo Kenyatta transitioned Kenya from a parliamentary system to a one-party republic and became president. His government comprised members of various ethnic groups in order to calm ethnic tensions. Kenyatta enacted capitalist economic policies, and for the first 20 years of its independence, Kenya had one of the fastest growing economies on the continent. Harambee supposedly derived from an Indian work chant and meaning pulling together, became Kenyatta's rallying call for the new nation, whose many challenges included healing the rift arising from the bitter struggle for independence, particularly in Kenyatta's native central Kenya region.
Harambee! Na mashamba yetu harambee! Na mifugo yetu harambee! Na serikali yetu tukufu harambee!
Before that, and even moving into the elections and after the elections, the Jaramogi was definitely the undisputed deputy of Mzee Kenyatta, and they liked each other, and they worked very closely. And whatever they did, they shared. So Jaramogi had a lot of influence, like the appointment of cabinet, appointment of various positions. The target for KANU then was to try and discourage tribalism and build a nation.
Some of you heard Kenyatta, you say, oh, that's a horrible man, I wouldn't like to see him. That's a horrible man. But here I am, ladies and gentlemen. I am just a human being like yourself. If I have done mistake to you, it's for you to forgive me. If you have done to me, I say it's for me to forgive you.
Kenyatta's way of doing things did not always attract approval. His critics saw him in the same light as most of Africa's post-independence leaders who replaced colonialism with a new form of dictatorship, rested on a pile of broken pre-independence promises. Most of the wealth created by Jomo Kenyatta's capitalist fiscal policy was concentrated in the hands of his friends and family. The widening wealth gap skewed in favor of the dominant Kikuyu at the expense of low-income Kenyans and members of the other ethnic groups, a problem that was exacerbated by rapid population growth. Indeed, Kenya was not an island. At the time, the West was checking the spread of communism and was not ready to lose the newly independent state to the East. Kenya was nevertheless to fall into the trap of the so-called ideological war of the 1960s between the West and the East, capitalism and communism, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. The intrigues of the complex war struck the heart of the Kenyan government. Barely 3 years of independence, Kenyatta and his vice president and pre-independence ally, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, went separate ways, with Odinga resigning in 1966 to form the Kenya People's Union, KPU.
no one, not in my position, can appreciate the feeling of sadness at this parting with my old friend and comrade, Mzee Kenyatta. We worked together in KAU for many years. Both of us were arrested on the same night, subsequently tried, and either detained or imprisoned for nearly 10 years.
Kenyatta has remained accused of ignoring the real Mau Mau war veterans who fought in forests and mountains, favoring the educated sons of chiefs and home guards. He started using colonial laws that were used against him during the fight for independence to jail those who questioned his style of doing things. Detention aside, the real turning point for the image of the Kenyatta administration came when the culture of political assassinations crept on to the nation's way of life so early, then several times during his rule. P.O. Gama Pinto, a member of parliament of Goan descent, was assassinated in 1965, hardly 2 years after independence. Then came the elimination of the presumptuous Kenyatta's lieutenant, Thomas Joseph Odhiambo Mboya.
A government began being suspected of killing politicians.
Mboya was gunned down in broad daylight along Government Road, now Moi Avenue, as he walked out of a chemist. Mboya's assassination immediately poisoned ethnic relations between the Luo tribe and President Kenyatta's Kikuyu community. Resentments among the Luos ended up in street battles with the police as frustrations mounted over the killing of one of Kenya's most talented political leaders. And it was only a matter of time before the assassinations startled one of Kenya's historical political friendships, that of Kenyatta and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. 3 months after the assassination of Mboya, a visit by President Kenyatta to Kisumu turned violent. It was on the 25th of October 1969 when Kenyatta traveled to Kisumu to open the Soviet-built New Nyanza Hospital. The ceremony ended in bloodshed, with presidential guards and police shooting over 50 people dead. After a commotion occurred on the presidential dais. The violence in Kisumu virtually ended the Kenyatta-Odinga warm relations.
Make no mistake, this has not been the orderly formation of a valid opposition party. There has been no privilege based on the honorable division in terms of high political principle. Here we have met an endeavor which hoped to make such impact as to destroy national stability and deprive the people of their constitutional right. It has failed.
Kenyatta never stepped in the lakeside city again until his death, while Jaramogi was systematically assigned to the political wilderness.
Mimi nikiwa kiongozi wa serikali hii ya Kenya, ninasema siwezi kukubali mtu au vikundi vya watu kuchezea serikali yetu katika ardhi yetu tuliyoipigania. Hapana.
But political assassinations were not to take a long break. Josiah Mwangi Kariuki, or JM Kariuki, was murdered in 1975. That heavily rendered suspect operatives within the Kenyatta administration. In August 1978, Jomo Kenyatta died, with Vice President Daniel Arap Moi taking over for 90 days. He was elected president during the elections that followed. My name is Enoch Sikoli, and this is the Kenyan Historian.